I am very grateful to be here with you all again this morning, given the fact that we are celebrating all of the saints in our lives that have blessed us, that have guided us, and that have assured us with the gift of their lives. Lives lived in the full measure and rich context of God's amazing grace. In some ways, we are here this morning because they have been here before us. I will tell you also, this is a most humbling moment for me on the Sunday before our national elections. Now, don't worry, I'm just a guest in this house and I'm not going to get very political on you. But I do think we ought to all consider what these elections mean for our democracy. And we also ought to consider what has happened in the last 10 days in our nation in terms of the horrifying tragedies that we have witnessed. Senseless deaths that have been motivated by base and ugly desires. I will ask you though, please, will you consider the absolute value of your vote in a democracy where votes still count? Please do vote on Tuesday. That's the end of the politics. I've been thinking a lot about the violence which we've seen eat at our world in some terrible ways in the last 10 days. And that reminds me of just simply how vulnerable we are and just how short our lives are in the context of these incomprehensible acts that have dominated our news cycle. Yet in kind of a strange way, I'm also very glad to be here in this spot this morning. To be here on All Saints Sunday with people who know and understand and celebrate the power of kindness and compassion. When we are facing tough times, it's a really good idea to hang out with saints. Every day in our world, someone is generous and merciful and tender-hearted towards their own and towards those strangers who they have never met before. There are indeed saints everywhere in the world that will not let love go. That will not let love go in the ways that they lead and find purpose in their lives. They will not give in to fear. They will not pander to cynicism or mean-spiritedness, and they know absolutely for certain what the greater good is. Our scriptures all remind us this morning of many important elements of our faith. That God is great and awesome and majestic. Thank you, Psalm 24. That our love matters. Our love matters. And that's how we give evidence of who we are as Christians. Thank you, John. And ultimately, at the end of the day, God will not let us go as He will wipe every tear from our eyes. He is always doing a new thing. Thank you John from Revelations. Now, perhaps you know the name Fred Rogers. The ninth graders that I teach at Flintridge Prep probably don't. So it takes me a lot longer to explain a few things to them. Fred Rogers meant a lot to us and a lot to kids we've known for a long, long time. But I found out a couple of important things this week that I didn't know. Firstly, the part I did know is, did you know that he was a Presbyterian minister? Of course, graduate of not Princeton where I went, but Pittsburgh. But what I didn't know is that he lived in Squirrel Hill, where the Tree of Life Synagogue is. I heard about this in the context of something else that he did that was actually quite remarkable. I heard a news report that was based on the theme, how do we help children deal with sadness and tragedy in our lives? And I looked up this news clip of Mr. Rogers. Here's what Mr. Rogers said to the kids in America after Robert Kennedy was shot to death at the Ambassador Hotel in 1968. When I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news, and my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people helping." I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world. Isn't that possibly a good way to start to begin to define sainthood? You don't really have to work miracles. You don't have to kick the winning field goal. And you don't have to be an amazing magician. It's really quite straightforward. As Jesus says to his followers, "Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, by your love, everyone will know that you are my disciples." Now granted, it's not always easy to be loving. But every act of love that we embrace will pull us out of the level of first instincts that we often operate on, fight or flight. And love will pull us into, and it will always pull us into, the realm of human decency, compassionate caring, and powerful community building. All the saints before us and all the saints that we have ever known and all of the saints among us this morning know that profound truth. Let me put it another way. What is exactly the evidence that is out there that would convict any of us here this morning of having chosen love this past week as our guiding light? If Jesus were to ask you what you've done and where you've been, and if Jesus was to ask you, how have you been loving, what would be your answer? So being a helper may start us on the path to sainthood, but I would suggest that it is practice over and over and over that will get us there. Having coached girls cross country for 19 years, there is nothing I can think of that is more important to becoming a good racer than practice over and over and over. Being reflective about who we are is a good start, and being accountable to Jesus, who is at the center of love, is absolutely essential. Allow me to read to you a lovely end of a note that Nelson Mandela wrote to his wife during his long period of solitary confinement in a South African jail. This is published in a book that was recently released of his letters from prison. You may find that the cell is an ideal place to learn how to know yourself, to search realistically and regularly the process of your own mind and your own feelings. In judging our progress as individuals, we tend to concentrate on external factors such as one's social position, influence, popularity, wealth, or standard of education. These are, of course, important in measuring one's success in the material world. And it is perfectly understandable if many people exert themselves mainly to achieve these things. But I have found internal factors may even be more crucial in assessing one's development as a human being. Honesty, sincerity, simplicity, humility, pure generosity, absence of vanity, readiness to serve others. Qualities which are within easy reach of every soul. These are the foundation of one's spiritual life. Development in these personal matters and matters of this nature is inconceivable without serious introspection, without knowing yourself, your weaknesses, and your mistakes. At least, if for nothing else, the prison cell gives you the opportunity to look daily into your entire conduct to overcome the bad and develop what is ever good in you. Regular meditation, say about 15 minutes a day before you turn in, can be very fruitful in this regard. You may find it difficult at first to pinpoint the negative features in your life. But on the 10th attempt, you may find rich rewards. Never forget, a saint is a sinner who keeps on trying. Being a saint does require some introspection, but it mostly and definitely requires disciplined practice. We all, each of us, need to keep on trying in whatever way we can. We need to stand up for good, choosing kindness, working to see the very best in others. This all takes patience and it takes practice. I would appeal to you this morning to be a helper wherever you can be, wherever and whenever. Be a helper and keep on trying, because Jesus would not have it any other way. Thank God for all the helpers in life and for those who keep on trying. Thank God for all the saints. Amen.